Hello, Orion Ghia here. This particular episode of AARGH My Optics is well long, so we've cut it into more digestible chunks. You can find the previous part right behind this in our uploads, unless you've already listened to it. In that case, welcome back. Let's get back into it, shall we? My optics! So Dave, these are a couple of subjects that you wanted to talk about. Number one being costumes.
Yes.
What did you want to say about costumes? Because you seem overly concerned with costumes, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's a big thing with Spider-Man is the costume he's wearing. I mean, it's not a.
I don't really.
That sounds like someone who's played a lot of the computer game before they knew anything about Spider-Man.
Yes, that is me.
Okay, right, just guess.
It's not. What's the best way of saying it? It's okay. It's not such a thing with Spider-Man. It's a thing with modern superheroes in general that they all have all these different looks for a different occasion, for a different comic run, a different story, a different person behind the mask. There's these different variations of Spider-Man's costume, right?
Yeah.
It's not a case of
not really, but
not a case of like it has to happen. It's just that it's a thing that happens.
Dave, there are only really 2, possibly 3 Spider-Man costumes.
Core. There are some one-offs.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's how do you want to look at it? Do you want the classic red and blue with Spider-Man webbing over it with big eyes?
Yeah.
You've got red and blue with littler eyes. You've got red and blue with wings, web wings.
Yeah.
You've got black.
And that's
You've got black that happens to be alive now.
Yeah.
And there's the one with the armor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then later on you've got the stealth suit. Which was for once, and then the electro suit that was once, then the one that J. Jonah Jameson put him in so that he could do webcamming and do live streams.
And then there's a Fantastic Four with a bag over the head one. And
yeah, there's Baggy.
But these are all one-off.
There's ones with holes down the side when he had 6 arms.
This is what I'm talking about.
What do you count as a difference?
But there really is just the red and blue.
Yeah,
the black,
and depending on what artist drew them.
Yeah, there's the red and blue costume. That's Spider-Man's classic original costume. Yeah. Then you have the black costume, and then after that, you just have a bunch of costumes that come in and out of fashion because modern comics like to do that now, and modern movies like to do that.
Yeah, this is.
You can sell a new action figure if they've got a slight variation.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they have to change the costume on every bloody movie so that they can sell you a new bunch of merchandise.
That's why they do it now. It's very, very apparent that they do it now.
They never used to do it, though.
Never used to, no.
But why want...
You always had the Spider-Man. You knew what he had. It was red, blue.
If you look at the Raimi movies, the costume barely changes.
Yes.
And even the Amazing movies, it does change, but not massively.
It's a big change between movies.
He just gets slightly larger eyes.
What?
What, between Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yeah.
They're very different.
How?
Well,
Hold on.
Okay, maybe not very different. There's things about that suit that's very different from the first one and the second one.
Really?
They're not. They're slightly different. There's an update to the costume, a little bit like the updates to the Batman costume in the Batman movies. But they're not huge. It's still a red and blue costume.
It's still a red and blue costume, but the Amazing Spider-Man 1 costume, which I actually really like, is very what's the best way of calling it? Homemade? Like it feels like he made it. It feels like a mishmash of sports gear with the trainers, with the blue fingers. He's got gold lenses for eyes that are from sunglasses.
I'm just having a quick Google, by the way, and not a euphemism. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Just look at a comparison. Okay, we'll look it up. Look at a comparison picture of Amazing Spider-Man 1, and then look at
listeners. Please excuse the sound of me typing. Amazing Spider-Man.
Listeners, please excuse the noise of my brain going a bit wrong.
Yeah, comparison.
Right.
Between Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, let's do that. Images.
Well, I've just gone and got the 2 DVD covers next to each other, and it's the same suit.
It looked roughly the same.
Well, from the top upwards, it would look like the same, but the design.
Oh, so it's just his shoes.
It's not the same.
Well, I don't know what you're saying. I want to be proved wrong, but I'm just trying to find it.
Are we talking about the grips on the bottom of his feet?
Maybe.
But the trainers, that's all part of it. It's different, but
the fact that he's got slightly thicker shoes on.
What?
Evolutionary. Here we go. That's a bloody video. I'm not watching that. I'm just gonna take your word for it. Although I don't think that the costumes between Amazing Spider-Man 1 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 they are definitely different. There are changes, but they're not huge changes. They're still essentially a red and blue suit with the same basic design, the same basic Spider-Man design.
I think these are differences only the costume department or a very ardent cosplayer would know the difference.
Mm.
Okay, yeah, it's not a.
Because it just looks like their shoes are slightly different shapes. There's different.
Anyway, maybe what we've done here, Dave, is we've derailed you. So, what was it you wanted to talk about the costumes for?
Okay, so I think it's becoming more of a thing what the costume looks like as time goes on.
Of course,
I think
it is.
that it's because to translate the Spider-Man costume into live action is a very difficult thing, and
I think it used to be, but I don't know if it is now.
No, what?
But go on. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. Carry on.
In terms of getting the look, it's fine, but to make it seem that it was made by Peter Parker and that it was something that he had to build himself, I think is a hard thing to do. And I actually really like Amazing Spider-Man's first suit for that, because it really does look like he made it.
But hasn't he got the proportional size and seamstressing of a spider?
And spiders are incredibly good at
They're very good at weaving.
They're very good at weaving stuff. Yep, that's true. I mean, if he can climb walls and he can, he's got spider sense and all these things, then surely he can. He's a great seamstress.
Yeah, his spider sense tells him whether he should be knitting or purling.
I thought that was a thing, wasn't it? I thought that was, at least in the Raimi film, the reason why he came up with the red and the blue is because it was the colours of the spider that bit him.
Yeah.
Well, do you not think it's kind of the other way round? They made the spider red and blue so they could explain the red and blue suits.
Yes, of course. No, I just mean why he decided to make it red and blue in the film. So yeah, maybe that is a hint of that.
He's red and blue because Ditko is a mad genius.
Yeah.
And he just liked the look of it and went, "Oh."
We certainly need to talk about Ditko in a bit. But the suits. I think the suits in Raimi are good. I think the suits in Webb are good. I think the original MCU suit is fine. I don't like the nano one at all.
Oh, the Iron Spider-ish type suit.
Yeah.
I don't like him having an onboard computer.
But that's all gone part of the soft to hard reboot that they've just done.
We've got rid of that now, thank God.
Yeah, that was going to be what I was building up to. That was my question. So so what do you both think about that direction of Spider-Man having all of this tech in this world where it seems everyone's got all this tech? Everyone's endorsed by Tony Stark in some regard.
Well, that's it.
So
that's it. It makes sense. It makes sense in this universe because, as we've already discussed, this whole thing has been about Tony Stark.
Yeah.
So, I don't like it. I really didn't like that in Homecoming he got that suit that had an onboard computer, but it was in service of the plot, so it was kind of okay. Because it was about him learning to be a superhero, which is why he had the training wheels protocol and all that kind of stuff. And Tony took it off him. And when Tony took it off him, the movie improved.
Yes.
Because I didn't want him to have a super suit with a bloody lethal mode and 460 different variations of spider web available to him. I didn't need or want that. But I did like the design. I did think that the original suit that Tony Stark gives him, it's a classic design. It's the red and blue. It's great. It's fine. It's got some little flourishes that are slightly different, but it's pretty faithful to Spider-Man's outfit.
Yeah, up until the ending of No Way Home, it was my favourite Spider-Man live-action suit. But
I think it's a bit hard to see the new one well enough to say whether it's your favourite or not. Really,
yes, but that depends on how many times you've rewatched it on the internet and how.
Yeah.
I wouldn't possibly ever do such a thing or condone such action.
No. Of course, we at AARGH My Optics never view anything on the internet that might be considered illegal.
If it's not on a disc or if it's not on Disney Plus, I ain't watching it.
So what do you think of the take of the suits in the MCU now? Because he's not going to have the tech anymore, or he shouldn't have the tech anymore, because there's no way for him to make another suit, and there shouldn't be a way of him having those connections to even have Stark tech.
He's just gonna make some lycra.
Yeah, and he has done.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's back to basics. That's what we need. I never liked any of the post Civil War suits. I don't like the introduction of gold into his costume. I know that that's just basically a Scarlet Spider thing, which was in the original Civil War comic book.
Iron Spider.
Iron Spider, yeah, sorry, Iron Spider. Yeah, because
Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly, completed. Let's get.
But just to vindicate myself slightly here, the Iron Spider suits were given to a bunch of guys called the Scarlet Spiders later.
Oh, when we're talking about the Initiative.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, you are right. It is the Iron Spider suit. The Scarlet Spider suit is a different thing. I get why it was done, and I would probably say that the MCU version of the Iron Spider suit is better looking than the comic book version, but I still don't like it.
He just needs to wear spandex, and that's all.
I just don't like how overly ornate and how overly technological it is.
Okay. It's just so it's something to kind of compare between the three, because obviously the others don't really have tech suits, and it's not to say that it makes a difference in those films. It's just the visuals. I can understand why people really like Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit, and that was a big thing. Like, it was meant to be the biggest, best translation of the classic suit, and I thought that think that really comes down for me upon rewatching it now. It's the lenses. It's the way he looks in the suit is amazing. It's great. It's
amazing.
It's amazing. It is amazing.
Is it spectacular as well? Is it sensational?
Or is it superior?
We're just getting into a whole web of things now.
No, I mean, I think that the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit and 1 are good. But I do really like the one that is introduced in Civil War. And I like the fact that but they've allowed him to have eyes open and close, and that makes some sense.
Yeah.
Because obviously in the comic books, it's a comic book. You can just make him have wide eyes, and you can just suspend your disbelief and not be bothered about the fact that his costume seems to be changing shape. But it's fine. Obviously in this real-world live-action kind of thing, it makes sense that... It's a bit odd. I did notice this when rewatching Homecoming, that his homemade suit also has eyes that open and close.
Shut, yeah.
He is a technical genius.
He is, yeah.
They do. They have gone over that extensively. Every incarnation,
of course.
Apart from Raimi's, he's just a bit bright in that one.
Well, I think that's what they did in Raimi. They thought, all right, is it a touch too ridiculous that he gets bitten by a spider and gets all these wonderful superpowers and doesn't die, and then secondly, he can also create this wonderful super material that no one's ever created before that you can swing around on.
What, spandex?
Yes, no, I obviously mean the webs.
Oh, the web fluid,
yes.
sorry.
Yeah. So they dispensed with that and just had the organic web shooters.
No, it's always integral to the character that he's a genius. That's why he's an outcast. That is why he's playing around with very suspicious types of experiments.
Yeah.
And how he ends up getting his powers because as a result of his actual intelligence.
Yeah.
Whereas being an accident kind of negates the fact of where he was, what he was doing.
Yeah, because they kind of do that in the Amazing Spider-Man. Is that he makes web shooters, but he gets it from Oscorp.
He nicks the fluid, but he makes the shooter.
He makes the shooter, but he kind of like one of the montages. I'm sure like he's got like a box full of them, like he's bought some or.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there are some. These are some of the better scenes in Amazing, like the stuff where he's mucking about with his tech, like when he's upgrading his web shooter so that he can fight Electro, and there's a whole kind of scene where he's getting a bigger and bigger battery, and then he sets it on fire and has to get the fire extinguisher out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's
good because it shows him being a scientist, which is what he is.
I like that he was watching a YouTube video to help him do it. It felt very relatable.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. But the thing about one of the things I wanted to say about the tech suits and the Iron Man suits is that he doesn't need that shit because Iron Man wears a big robotic suit because he's just a guy, and uses it to power himself up. Spider-Man is super strong. He has all these superpowers. He doesn't need armor. He doesn't need an onboard computer. He doesn't need any of that stuff. He's got spider senses, all kinds of shit that is innately part of him anyway.
Yeah. Because you've got to bear in mind about Spider-Man is he is massively overpowered. Like, ridiculously. Like, canon in the comics is that he's always pulling back his punches. To the point that when Superior Spider-Man happened and Doc Ock took over his body, first time he punched anyone, he took the Scorpion's jaw off. Because he didn't realise how much Peter Parker was holding back all the time. This is someone who's taken down the Hulk. This is someone whose super senses work at such speed that he can avoid electricity being shot at the speed of light.
Yeah.
You know, this is a character who is ridiculously overpowered. And it's canon that he knows this and is holding back all the time.
Yeah, he has to teach himself not to crush everyone's skull every time he punches them, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, he doesn't need tech.
Yeah, I mean, he does. The only tech he needs is the web shooters.
Yeah, because it's the one thing he can't do. He wants to be more spider-like, so he has web shooters. But he's a genius, so he made them.
Yeah, he needs a long-ranged weapon and some way of getting about town.
Yeah,
done.
Because wall crawling isn't that fast.
No.
It's handy to avoid traffic, but it's not going much faster than the traffic.
Yeah, so it's a big problem for the MCU with me. It's not so much Orion's always complaining about me picking up on the little things that it's not significant. It's like you know how
he accuses me of being a pedant as well.
This is true.
People have masks, wear helmets in the MCU. Yeah. But there was like a weird point where no one took their helmet off anymore. They just willed it off. And it really bugs me. I don't know why. It's such a little thing, but Ant-Man, Black Panther, like, they will have their helmets just evaporate or fold into their...
Oh yeah, they all have this amazing technological shit that means that everything just kind of disappears.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand why it's necessary. I mean... It's
just become a kind of shorthand, hasn't it? It's like, we want to see the actor's face.
You know, it came about because they forgot to film the scene with them taking it off once.
Yeah.
And then they just went, oh, we'll keep that.
But yeah, I mean, costumes... I think I'm always going to be more enamoured with the classic red and blue than I am with any other.
For me, there's two costumes. There's red and blue or black.
Yeah, I would say it. I would agree.
Actually, speaking of that, what did you guys think of the black suit in the Raimi films? Because they were going to originally have it as the classic suit, but I think there's a quote from Sam Raimi about it looking too much like a porno film, and that would have.
Well, I suppose it does look a bit gimpy, doesn't it?
You're like, yeah, in real life, when they made it, it was like, no.
It doesn't look that good anyway. It was just to make it look vaguely different back in the 80s when they brought it in.
Yeah. And it was based on Spider-Woman's costume. The other Spider-Woman.
Yeah, the Julia Carpenter one.
Yeah.
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah, I think the red and blue is the best.
Yeah.
So, you wanted to talk about costumes. I think we've covered that.
Mm-hmm.
Soundtracks and scores.
Danny Elfman, right?
Yeah, he did the score for the Raimi movies.
It's brilliant. It's amazing. It's spectacular. It's all of those things. I love it.
It's the only one that stands out. It's the only one that's memorable, I think. I don't think the score for Amazing or even MCU, I don't think any of us could hum it.
But all of them take riffs on or blatantly use the original 60s cartoon one.
Mm. Yes.
Yeah, they all do that.
They've all done it at some
absolutely.
point.
And I think the Danny Elfman theme, it's good. It's used a lot during the movie. It's used, and I really like the way that the Raimi movies use the intro of the movie to recap the previous movie. That's always good, and they play the theme then as well. So it kind of like sticks with you.
Even Spider-Man 3, it's not Danny Elfman does that one, but I think.
But they still use his theme.
He end up helping in the end or something. The guy couldn't finish it, but I still.
Well, he's one of the greats, isn't he? Like I think he's one of the most memorable modern score guys.
There was a point where you wanted a soundtrack, you went to Danny Elfman or John Williams, and that was it. They were the pinnacle of it. Now you get Hans Zimmer in.
Yeah, but they've kind of stood the test of time, haven't they? Generally.
My optics.
Right, so I think what we should now do is go around the table and say who your favourite Spider-Man is and why, and which your favourite Spider-Man movie is and why. How about we go with Galac-tosh first?
So, favourite Spider-Man? Well,
or Peter Parker. In fact, you could separate them if you want.
It's my favourite Spider-Man would be Garfield, but that's just as Spider-Man, not as Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And I don't like any of them really as Peter Parker. If I had to push one, it would be Tom Holland. Just because I don't want to punch him in the face, and I don't think he's too cool to be Spider-Man.
Fair enough. And why is that your favourite Spider-Man then? Why is Garfield?
He's got the look.
Spider-Man?
He's got the moves, and he's got the patter.
Yeah.
Whereas none of the rest of them have got the, the quips, the fluid motion of it. Like obviously, one of them's doing their own stunts, which is Tom Holland, but because he can do all the flips and that. But Garfield just sort of rounds it out. It just like seems to fit better, looks better on the screen because he's got that lanky willowiness about him.
Yeah, he's got the right kind of build, isn't he, for Spider-Man?
Yeah. Whereas the others are too squat.
Yeah, they're short guys, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's a scene in the Amazing Spider-Man 1 where he's fighting the lizard in the school and he crawls around him.
Yeah.
That sequence feels really like a spider, like his...
I mean, that's CGI, I imagine, but...
Yeah, of course. Yes.
But it does look good. Yeah, it does look good.
Yeah, so Garfield and Holland, bit of a mix.
Yeah, and favourite movie?
Oh, it's Spider-Man 2. Let's just go with the classic. The one that's... I've already gone into my reasons. Don't want to bore the listeners again with saying exactly the same thing about pathos again. But yeah, I'll go for Spider-Man 2.
Cool. So, Dave, how about you?
This is tough.
You have plenty of time to think about it.
My favourite Peter Parker is Tom Holland.
Right.
I think that he, in terms of a Peter Parker of today, what I would imagine the nerdisms and the type of bullying he faces, it's not really someone, beating him up for lunch money. It's just a guy getting on his nerves who you could beat up, but it's like, no, I'm not going to beat up Flash Thompson. It's a different type of more what I would think is going on in a school at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it, he sells it to me as Peter Parker. Spider-Man, I might have to agree. I do think Andrew does have a very good feel of being Spider-Man when he's in costume and he's doing his things, he's making his quips. It does give me that Spider-Man vibe.
Yeah.
Of, like, Tom Holland does do it as well. I'll say that he doesn't have his one little moments where he's like fighting bad guys dressed like the Avengers and makes funny jokes. But I think Andrew does it a bit better.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more panache to what he does.
Yeah.
Just the way he kind of swaggers about.
Mm-hmm.
There's that cockiness that
Yes.
is important. Spider-Man is cocky. And that's there. Anyway, so, favourite movie? Don't be afraid to say something we're going to disagree with.
Because we will disagree if it's not Spider-Man 2.
Oh, okay. It's Spider-Man 1.
Oh, the first one. Okay.
The first
Well,
one.
that's an interesting choice.
It's not the worst choice you could have made.
Why?
Why? It's too hard to separate it because it's my first introduction to Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
That was the film. That was it.
Yeah.
That was the thing that made Spider-Man a big part of my life. And for over the years and all this different spin-offs and whatnot, I love that film. Like,
yeah. You did say you were very, very young when it came out, and
yeah.
I've seen a lot of people talking about the original Spider-Man movies and talking about how they love all three of them. And those people who on YouTube and stuff, and those people are people who generally grew up with them, and therefore the problems with 3 just aren't such a problem because they were kids. Yeah, it's not a bad choice. I think Spider-Man is a great movie. All right, well, I'll give you mine. I don't think it'll be of any huge surprise. My favourite Spider-Man is, I agree with both of you, it's Garfield. I think that he has it down. The jokes are on point. The way he acts as Spider-Man, like the way he swaggers about, the way he kind of like, he's very kind of off the cuff and funny about it, and he just kind of moves in a really good way. There's some really great stuff in those movies, despite them having all of their problems. There's some really good scenes with him crime fighting across both movies. Mm-hmm. I mean, the bit where he's fighting Electro and all of a sudden he's there with a fireman helmet on and a hose. And he's swinging it around like and then pretends to like holster it. It's great.
I forgot about that bit.
Yeah,
I love all that stuff. It's brilliant. He's perfect. But I would also go as far as to say that I probably prefer Garfield as Peter Parker as well. But mostly it's because of the emotional beats that he hits.
Okay.
With Gwen, with Ben as well, and with just the emotional beats of Spider-Man. I think he hits them quite well as Peter Parker, even though I do understand where Galac-tosh is coming from with him being a little bit too good looking and a little bit too cool. But I still think I would choose him. I'd definitely choose him over Maguire. Mm-hmm. Holland, I kind of like Holland's Peter Parker, but he's not my Peter Parker.
Okay.
He's like I was saying to Dave, before No Way Home came out and pretty much proved me right, I was saying Tom Holland's Peter Parker is a variant. After watching Loki, I'm like, he's a variant Peter Parker, and the real Peter Parker or Parkers are the other ones, or they're more close to the Peter Parker I know and love.
Because this Peter Parker's a bit too much like a puppy dog. Very earnest, very wanting approval.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he is. He's very much like that. He's constantly searching for someone to tell him it's okay and that he's doing a good job.
Rub his belly.
Yeah, yeah, good boy. Yeah, exactly. But then, so my favourite Spider-Man movie, it is Spider-Man 2. It is Spider-Man 2. Just because you've got an amazing baddie played by what's his name?
Alfred Molina.
He's fantastic. He's a believable baddie with believable motivations, even though, here and there it goes a bit mad, but that's because he's those tentacles are trying to take over his mind and they're insane. And it hits all the right beats, and it's got the origin story out of the way, and it's allowed to be a proper Spider-Man movie about Spider-Man and about his villains and about his journey towards becoming a superhero, which no other movie's really been able to do so well. I would also say that my second favourite would probably be Homecoming, because I just think it's a good movie, but it's not so much a great Spider-Man movie. It's just a good movie.
Fair point.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I think we've come to a fairly good consensus there.
My optics!
Before we, I suppose we can talk about before we wrap it all up. Although we might go on a little bit of a tangent about Steve Ditko. We suppose we should.
Well, if you're talking about Spider-Man, it's rude not to mention Ditko.
Yeah, we'll do a Ditko section in a bit, but where do we see them taking the character next, and where would you like them to take the character next?
Oh. Well, next things I can see is Sony bringing out more Garfield and Maguire films.
You think so? Ooh.
Do you think they'll do that?
Yeah.
I know there's rumours.
There's strong rumours that the Mobius film has got Andrew Garfield in it.
Really? Okay.
Okay.
So we're saying Mobius is based in that tangential universe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because even the trailers have they've got Spider-Man in the background saying murderer and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
People thought it'd be in the Tom Holland one, but it's using the Amazing Spider-Man spider.
Oh.
On the walls.
There's also a graffiti of Tobey's Spider-Man in one of that trailer as well somewhere, isn't there?
Oh, I don't know about that one.
And the Vulture's in it.
Yes.
Well, haven't we done well to avoid a correction up until now? This is partly because the guys are so damn knowledgeable, and partly because Orion Ghia is sick of editing them in. However, we do need to clarify the Morbius trailer Easter eggs a little. There are actually a number of references to a number of continuities in the trailer. We see the Oscorp building from the Garfield movies in the skyline, a poster of Maguire Spider-Man with murderer daubed across it, Michael Keaton's Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture from Holland's Spider-Man, and Morbius himself references Venom, who from the end credit scenes of both Let There Be Carnage and No Way Home, we know comes from a separate reality. All very interesting. Well, that's the thing. I really liked at the end of Homecoming the post-credit scene where they're basically setting up a possible kind of Sinister Six kind of situation with the Scorpion and Vulture.
Yeah.
And I think that's where they would have gone if Endgame and all that stuff hadn't have kind of intervened and swept Spider-Man away on his space adventures. They could have gone in that direction.
I really can't wait to do a Sinister Six. It's like the main goal, isn't it?
Well, I mean, what have they got left? They've done so many of the other things.
We've had a Sinister Five now.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, we have. It was strange that they didn't round that out to 6, isn't it? But
what was really strange is have you seen Let There Be Carnage?
No,
not
yet. I've seen the first one, but not the second one yet.
Post credit. Oh, spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's not worth watching it. Post credit scene of Venom, Let There Be Carnage, involves Tom Hardy Venom waking up to see the telly and being introduced to who Tom Holland's Spider-Man is.
Right.
And it's the breaking news of this is Spider-Man, and they're sort of going, "What's a Spider-Man?"
Yeah,
because they've moved over to the MCU.
All right.
And then for some reason, right at the end of No Way Home, the entire arc is done up with having a post-credit scene of them going back.
Yeah.
But leaving behind a bit of the symbiote.
Yes. So for some reason, the Sony Venom is jumping about realities.
So that's your 6.
Yeah,
but he didn't know. He didn't get the invite.
Instead of getting involved, he gets drunk in a bar and then leaves behind a bit of symbiote. So,
which is fair enough,
they're
really.
definitely angling for the black suit Spider-Man.
It fits with the character. I mean, I actually enjoyed that first Venom movie more than I thought I would. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
The second one is actually ups the crazy a bit.
Okay.
So, I I imagine that they're going to... I mean, what I'd like them to do is different to what I imagine they're going to do. And I've heard rumblings about there being like another trilogy. The plan is to... Now they've soft rebooted Spider-Man in the MCU, they're going to move on to another 3 movies. I imagine they'll all have one common word in their title, just like Homecoming, No Way Home, 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 home.
Money, lust for cash.
Yeah,
need
something
more
like that.
cash.
Exactly.
Let's get some more cash.
Yeah. So I imagine that's what they will do, something like that. And I would like to see it remain more on a more low key kind of vigilante level.
Low key or low key?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Low key.
Low key, not low key. But yeah, because what we haven't done, not in the MCU anyway, is build up a bunch of villains for him that are all kind of intertwined with each other. Because the thing about Spider-Man is it's a soap opera. It actually kind of lends itself more to a TV series than it does a movie.
That's all Marvel, though.
Yeah.
From the beginning.
And we know there's going to be an animated TV series called Freshman Year or something.
Oh, is it going to be animated?
Yeah, and that's going to be covering... apparently that's going to be covering the MCU Spider-Man's origin story, stroke how it... Basically, the bit before Tony Stark comes in. So that could be interesting. I mean, what they could do, if they're going to do another 3 movies, they could have animated TV shows that go in between the movies or something like that. But I would like it to be now we've had the big space adventure and all that and Tony's story, which is fine. Now we've reset him down to no one knows who he is. He's on his own and he's sitting there in his rented apartment listening to police scanners, and he's got his spandex costume which he made himself. I would like to see it go back to a kind of him on his own doing kind of like low-level crime fighting.
However, he's going to be running into Daredevil now.
Oh yeah, well that's fine.
Yeah.
That's perfect because that's like you said before.
And they're going to team up and take down Wilson Fisk.
Well, like you said, Tosh, you said that he is a low-level, street-level hero, even though he's massively overpowered. It's the people that he tends to rub shoulders with are people like Daredevil, like Luke Cage, like all of those folk that are, Hawkeye. Even though Hawkeye's, in the comics, he's punching way above his weight all the time, but still. Yeah.
It's when you look at when Spider-Man was in the New Avengers.
Yes.
Right. It started off with, all right, you've got the big guns in there, but when they weeded out the big guns, it was Luke Cage, it was Iron Fist, it was Doctor Strange, it was Wolverine. Mm-hmm. It was not your global powers. It's not, I'm going to snap my fingers, I'll burn up a sun, people. Exactly.
It was because they basically what happened in case you're not aware, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
During Civil War, the Avengers got split in 2.
All right.
Those who were on Cap's side and those who were on Iron Man's side. And you had the Avengers and the Avengers Initiative and all that stuff. And then you had the New Avengers, which were basically the heroes that didn't agree with the superhuman registration idea, which was the whole premise of Civil War in the comics.
If you ever want to read a good run of Avengers, it is New Avengers.
I agree.
Because it starts off basically as the Avengers. Mm-hmm. God-level people in it. But then Civil War happens, Tony Stark's gone. Cap gets shot. Mm-hmm. And you're down to a team that essentially is about paranoia.
Yeah.
It's about they're out to get us, and they're the only people who know that Skrulls are invading Earth.
Yes, because that's the secret invasion stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's a good team, and they are all street level.
Listeners, it's a great run. Check it out.
It is really, it really is.
And you can see where all of the MCU these days comes from.
Absolutely.
It's essentially it's Mark Miller
and
Brian Michael Bendis. It's them two.
I've said this before, like the MCU, Mark Miller is responsible for how that Avengers movie turned out.
Yeah.
His take on the Avengers was Ultimates, the original Ultimates comic. Mm-hmm. And this, I mean, the very fact that you've got Samuel L. Jackson playing Nick Fury is because of that comic book.
Well, it's more illegal wrangling because of that comic book.
Yeah.
It's more because they used his likeness without telling him, and he often went, "Well, I love the comics, and I won't sue, but if you cast Nick Fury, it's my role." And they went, "All right, then. We're never going to do that." Oh shit, we did. Right, come on, Samuel, get your role out.
So I suppose that's kind of what I'd like to see. I'd like to see more kind of grounded stuff. I know there's going to be big tentpole events, and that's fine, and I don't mind him getting involved in them. But I just like his solo movies to be proper solo movies that I can watch, like Spider-Man 2, like Homecoming, where they're self-contained proper movies about Spider-Man rather than the stepping stones to the next big event. Dave, what are your thoughts?
I'm worried about the future of Spider-Man, to be honest. I think the problem with Spider-Man is what you guys pointed out earlier, is who owns Spider-Man and how that works and how the money behind that works. So it's not really a question about what stories they're going to tell. It's about who's going to be in charge of those stories being told. There seems to be a real big focus on his villains and them having their own separate movies before they even meet Spider-Man. Okay, that may be, but it's weird that that's the decision that one studio is doing, but then maybe another studio is focusing more about how you'll interact with the world and stuff. So how that works together, and then sprinkle in Spider-Verse and all the what that could mean for all the different things. I'm worried, but I'm also hopeful because of this film. Like, even after Far From Home, I was starting to think, well, what's going to happen to Spider-Man in the world of movies after that? But now this film has happened, and they've established so many different things and how they could reset it all. Maybe there is hope for it to really springboard into something.
I wouldn't worry so much, because after this film and after what Marvel, the MCU have done with Spider-Man, the MCU will have a Spider-Man, because Sony, the backlash against Sony would be like Amazing Spider-Man 2 worse. It'd be even worse than that. People would stop even worrying about going, oh, there's a Mobius film. Venom films are coming out. It'd be like, no, you've screwed up Spider-Man, go away. What exactly happened after Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out?
Yeah.
That came out to the point that Sony had to go, all right, let's do a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
Disney, I'm not referring to you as a devil. Please don't sue. I know you're litigious. Please leave me alone.
You're right. I mean, but like, you know, Sony have kind of been doing these spin-off movies in the form of Venom, and now they're doing Morbius. But they're not nearly as popular as what's been happening with Spider-Man being crossing over the MCU. And I think Sony will want to hold on to that, especially with No Way Home being so successful.
It costs them nothing, and it's an advert for them. Marvel take all the risk.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's not a question of that. It's just, I guess it's because of the stories I think would be good to be told for this version of Spider-Man. Like you guys mentioned before, it's the villains have his Rose Gallery is really rich of stories and how they weirdly intertwine with what he's doing in his own life, and how they, get turned into supervillains or already villains that he stumbles across. It's that side of it that I'm more worried about, or at least.
Well, there's only one of his actual big villains left to do, and that's Kraven,
which is rumored to be involved.
They are going to be doing soon. It. Yeah.
Outside of that, what are we going to do? The Leaper?
Well, Scorpion, Black Cat.
Scorpion.
I mean, Black Cat's not really a villain, not mostly,
no.
but she's
just a Catwoman again.
She's definitely going to be brought in at some point, I would have thought.
You don't think that they would do the others again because they weren't his versions of those characters?
Well, I think I wouldn't be surprised if they brought Vulture back.
Yeah,
because Keaton did a fantastic job at that.
He did. Yeah.
I don't know now that they've done No Way Home and they've brought all the ex-villains in from the other universes. Yeah. I don't know if they'd now introduce an MCU Green Goblin or an MCU.
I don't think they're going to touch them.
No, I think they're going to leave those alone.
It's literally just be who's never touched now. It's like Kraven, Scorpion.
Mm-hmm.
to a point, maybe they could do the Rhino.
Yeah,
because he wasn't really touched.
Yeah, they could do the Rhino with no issue because no one even remembers that even happening.
Because after that, what you got? Carrion,
Morlum,
the Jackal.
Yeah,
but if they're going to go Morlun, they're going to be going back into the Spider-Verse again.
Yeah, there they are. They are. Yeah. And maybe those kind of characters might actually turn up in the Spider-Verse animated movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's still plenty of stuff to be mined there. But I think they're going to probably try and head towards some kind of version of their own version of Sinister Six, or at least bringing in some of those characters. But yeah, I agree that I don't think they're going to bring in a new Octopus, a new Doctor Octopus, or a new
and the Goblin's done now.
Yeah. Done to death, really, because you had, you've had two different versions of him and the new Goblin as well, as that. I suppose you could do Hobgoblin.
Well, that's more likely because they are setting up Ned Leeds, the Hobgoblin, as being in it now, and now he's got magic.
Yeah,
I honestly thought he might become Hobgoblin and turn it into the Sinister Six in the last film.
I hate Ned. What? I can't stand him. He's so annoying.
Yeah, I get that. There's something about his hair.
It's not real.
Well, yeah, it just looks so much like a wig. And I know he's wearing a wig, but it just annoys me.
For me, him and MJ in the MCU, they don't come across as real characters. They just come across as people on the set who
snark and smirk.
Exactly. They're really kind of like, oh, isn't this it? Oh, you're called Otto Octavius. Ha 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 ha. Oh, it's so annoying.
And yet, in Spider-Man 2, you get the fantastic. Who would have thought a man called Otto gets 8 arms and becomes an octopus?
Yeah, but that's funny.
Makes more sense. As I go, Doctor Octopus.
Yeah. I'm glad that Ned and MJ no longer know who Peter Parker is, and hopefully they can just be get them out of there.
And now they can pull in a Gwen Stacy.
Yep. Yes. Perfect. Cast a great Gwen Stacy, and I'll be very pleased with that.
My optics!
Okay, we all watched In Search of Steve Ditko, didn't we?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to hear Dave's opinion on this, because I reckon I know Galac-tosh's opinion on it.
Well, it wasn't what I was expecting. Good old Jonathan Ross.
Mm-hmm.
In what way were you not expecting? Sorry. Yeah. I just want to know.
Well, I guess what I mean is I didn't expect what type of documentary about Ditko it was. It felt more like something Jonathan Ross really wanted to do, which made it more like
it. Loves it.
Yeah, it made it like, first off, it's the best person to do it. This is not something you want, I don't know, Trevor McDonald doing a documentary on. It's the great person
maybe
to do
he's
this.
Passionate about comics.
It's really well done. It goes through the history in a nice way. For someone like me who knows pretty much nothing about that era of Marvel, let alone Spider-Man, I know tidbits here and there and references and little Easter eggs and all these little things, but I don't know it's that timeline really at all. And it was a good way of laying it out for a newbie like me. I thought it was really good. It's interesting though about the whole talk about who created Spider-Man and who should be credited and how it's worded and the two different opinions on it.
Yeah, I think the first time you watch it, that's definitely the thing that stands out. Yeah. Stan Lee's kind of inability to acknowledge the creative input that Stephen Ditko clearly did put in. I honestly think in Stan Lee's mind, it's very clear to him. I came up with the idea, therefore I created him.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I understand that point of view, but it kind of disregards how much of what Spider-Man is down to Steve Ditko.
I over the years, I thought this whole debate was about the rights in terms of maybe like money or top billing or something. But
apart from with Ditko, who didn't care much for money, just privacy.
Yeah, That was a really interesting thing that I took away from it. It's like, well, it's not really about any of that for him. It's just he wants to be acknowledged that he was there when this happened and that he played a big part in its creation, which is fair enough. Like, I get it. If it's not just about, wait, there was a new Spider-Man film, where was my check? It's not about that at all.
He doesn't give a shit about that. No. Well, he didn't give it. He's dead now. R.I.P. But
it's very interesting.
But yeah, he didn't give a shit about that. It was more about. I mean, you see when in the documentary when you start talking about what he did afterwards, like when he did.
Yeah,
Mr. A.
He was an interesting view.
Yeah, and Hawk and Dove. You can see that he's got such a very kind of binary outlook on things that
black and white all the way.
So yeah, he's like, I need you, Stan Lee, to tell the world that I co-created Spider-Man. I don't need money. I don't need anything else. I just need you to admit to everyone that you're lying or you're wrong, and that we created it together.
And yet Stan wrote him a letter saying that I consider him to do it. But because he was given a letter so that he could tell everyone that Stan Lee considers that I co-created, wasn't enough for him because he wanted Stan Lee to go, he did co-create it with me.
He needs to say...
I consider him as the co-creator.
Yeah, he needed to say specifically...
But because he didn't tell the world, so Stan's given Steve the tools to tell the world that I did co-create it, but that's not what Ditko wanted.
No, and he doesn't like the use of the word consider, because that means that's just what Stan Lee thinks, not what is reality.
Even though this is an argument about whether Stan Lee created it on his own or not, and Stan Lee is saying, I consider he created it with me, which is essentially the same thing, but it's because Stan isn't going out and telling the world he did it with me. Ditko doesn't want to be the one to have to go out and do it himself.
And also, I think so much water had gone under the bridge by that point that he needed an implicit admission rather than... Because he says in the documentary, like, if Steve wants to be considered the co-creator of Spider-Man, he can consider himself the co-creator of Spider-Man. And it's such a kind of like... So you're not saying he is, you're just saying if he wants to believe that, that's fine with me. That's not enough.
It's a weird debate because I don't really know what it is he wanted to happen in a way that would have been satisfying. Like, did Stan have to go on TV and tell everyone? Like, I think
he just needed Stan to say the words, Steve Ditko co-created Spider-Man, and not use any qualifiers, no caveats, just that.
Who's he sending this to? Who's he telling? Like,
just anybody.
Anyone who comes in.
Needs to say it publicly somehow. Yeah,
he wants him to walk up and down Main Street with a billboard, a sandwich board over his shoulder, saying, "Steve Ditko created this with me."
Exactly.
And he'd have been happy.
Yeah.
I think Ditko would have been happy if only Stan Lee had gone up to like 5 people and told them, "This man created it with me," and he'd be happy.
He just needed to say it implicitly. That's all.
But they both had fundamental differences on what creation was.
Yeah, agreed.
Right, Stanley honestly believed that if he came up with an idea, that was it. It's my idea. They just facilitated it for me. It was that telling line where he said, well, if it hadn't succeeded, then I'd have come up with something that didn't work.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it is very dismissive of basically Ditko and Kirby. They come up with the visual style for everything. It's different with Jack Kirby, but Ditko drew all the stories around a loose plot where Stan would fill in the words later.
Yeah.
The words that Ditko wrote were nothing like the ones Stan Lee would come later to use. Yeah. Like, there's a famous bit where there's some protesting students, and he's basically got the army wanting to shoot them down, and Spider-Man going, you go get them, police. They shouldn't be protesting. And obviously, Stan's put the different spin on this, where Spider-Man's supporting the protesters.
Because Stan understood the zeitgeist a lot better than Steve did. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, and Stan does admit this, that first few issues or so, Stan kind of plotted them quite quite stringently. But after that, he pretty much just let Ditko write most of it because he could do it. So it would just be Ditko draws the comic and he just sticks words in it.
The argument's a bit different with Kirby.
Yes, yeah.
That's much deeper argument about who actually created what and come up with what.
Yeah.
And
but they both died very poor men.
Yeah.
When there's multi-million-pound franchises based on their work. Yeah. Which is that's the great shame of it, really.
Just when did Kirby die? He died in the 90s. So he didn't even know there's going to be riches coming.
Exactly.
Yet still he was fighting the fight because he knew it was wrong.
Yep.
And Ditko didn't care about the money. He just wanted the principle. Mm-hmm. Stanley died a very rich man.
Yeah.
However hard his daughter tried that not to happen.
Yeah. But it was good seeing on the documentary, seeing people like Alan Moore,
the Northampton Wizard.
Alan Moore talking about Spider-Man, like, and also
someone who quite happily will rip off other people's works for his own, but then gets really annoyed at DC for ripping off his work for their own use. Yeah. That's a different argument, though, isn't it?
He's a complicated man, isn't he?
I'll use Tom Sawyer, and I'll use Tom Sawyer and Sherlock Holmes and Harry Potter for my own works. DC, what are you doing using my work for your own use? Wah!
It just sounds a lot like him.
Yeah. But no, it's a good documentary. I watched it a couple of times before doing this. It's really good. It kind of because it gives you a grounding in what the fundamentals of Spider-Man are as well. Like I think it really kind of drives home what that initial idea and initial concept is, and from that spawned a giant multimedia entertainment, franchise.
Yeah, because this year is its 60th anniversary.
It is indeed, yes. Well done for reminding us. I definitely wanted to mention it because it is 60 years since Spider-Man was created this year.
Oh, well, Fantastic Four was created 60 years last year, so that's where I came. Mm-hmm. That's when the real Marvel Universe began.
Pretty much.
June 61.
My optics!
Well, that settles that. I think we can agree that I am both right and a better Spider-Man fan than Dave. Correct? Hit me up on social media to call me a self-righteous spider snob on Facebook, where you will find an AARGH My Optics page. I am on there as Orion Ghia. I'm on Twitter as @GearOrion and on Instagram as Orion_Ghia. Alternatively, if you want to join Virtual Dave in his wrongness and confused misunderstanding of Spider-Man, you can find him at
Virtual Dave 26 on Instagram.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, all joking aside, that discussion was all the more enriched by the presence of our new friend to the podcast, Galac-tosh.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. It's been great. Please come back when, when we talk about Fantastic Four or something, or some other Marvel related, or anything.
Happy to come back anytime.
Perfect.
Woohoo!
Great. Well, that's something to look forward to. As per usual, if you enjoyed this as much as we did, why not express that enjoyment by liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, etc., etc., etc. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and please join us next time on, shout it together guys,
My Optics!